Good evening. Tonight, Interloon has a plan for mining and selling helium-3 from the moon. Excuse me. The Japanese company iSpace's Resilience lunar lander successfully achieved lunar orbit. Meantime, NASA's having problems getting its Viper rover even to the moon. Space finally made the list of industries reshaping the global economy by 2040. The UK firm ClearSpace finishes phase 2 of its debris removal mission. And do we already have an official product line for space warfare machinery? That and the beginning of a rousing discussion of how space settlements will pay for themselves, along with your comments. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Hello, everyone. As you know, this program is hosted by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what is the Center? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable small and medium businesses, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. That includes new space business plan competition events, space investment summits, and a lot of other things we're working on. Now, a lot of our work, especially this podcast, is supported by our listeners and fans like you. So if you go to, well, hopefully you will see the QR code at the top of the screen on the upper left. It will take you to our donation portal. Keep helping us out. A little in the tip jar each month makes a big difference. Thanks in advance. Joining me now is one of my podcast producers, entrepreneur, one of my oldest space friends, Michael Lane from Liftport. Michael, you got here. Great seeing you.
That was close. That was as close as it has been. Sorry, man.
Oh, well, it's closer yet because we don't have Sean tonight.
Yeah, no.
Our other producer, Sean Key, is out tonight.
Yeah.
And so, and Mike made it home just in time to get all the stuff set up. So, here we were. And
only some of the stuff. You notice that. There's a little note that says orientation selection not available while live. So we are in mobile view instead of desktop view, and you can't change it once you start the program. So
okay,
I'm like,
well, here we go, folks. A whole new program. We don't know where it's going. All I know is our donation link is gone. And so again, for the second show in a row now,
I will get you.
I'll put my address here. You can send us a check, folks. How's that? We'll just do it the old-fashioned way, with an envelope and a stamp, and the guy with the leather satchel comes around. Whatever you need to do. Anyway, well, I hope you're doing okay.
Everything's good.
Doctor appointment.
Yeah. No, everything's good. Everything's fine. I just wasn't expecting it to go. You know how sometimes the docs are like, well, 15 minutes, moving on. I got a lot of time out of the doc, which was kind of nice. So anyway, it took longer than I was anticipating. But here I am. So let's just get into it. What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's start with here's the thing. I always think this is funny, but apparently people are starting to do it now. Long ago, when I was early in the days, back in the mid-aughts, when I was the young budding space cynic, and our famous blog that Chevrolet and Dr. David Livingston and I did. And we always talked about, when we talked about space advocacy and new space, alt space, whatever we wanted to call it at the time, there's always certain religious subcults that you could point to. One of those was the $1 trillion asteroid. The another one, actually, I have to say it, space-based solar power. That's still a very powerful cult, and it might be on the verge of actually accomplishing something. But the other one was helium-3 mining on the moon for fusion reactors that don't exist. But I guess there's other uses for helium-3, and a company called Interloon is building some hardware to do just that, and they insist they're going to get this done. They're a pretty interesting company, and they partnered up. They partnered up with a company called Vermeer Corp, an industrial equipment manufacturer. Now they've been around for 75 years.
Right.
They know how to make excavators. This is what these people do. And apparently, very soon now, they're going to unveil a full-scale prototype of an excavator that's designed to ingest, are you ready for this, 100 metric tons of moon dirt in an hour.
Right. That's
after the helium-3, yes. And after the helium-3 is extracted, the machine would then drop the rest of the dirt out the other end back onto the lunar surface in one continuous motion. That was always one of our big concerns with strip mining the moon. We leave these big scars on the moon for everybody to look at.
Yep.
And maybe they'll minimize that problem. And so again, now they're having they've got separate agreements with the U.S. Department of Energy and Maybell Quantum Industries to start supplying lunar helium-3 by 2029. I thought it was 2049. Okay,
and what does that take? That takes re-entry capability, right?
Yep.
We've been talking about that on our last show.
Yep.
Yeah. So say what you're about to say. You said 2029, and you thought it was going to be 2049. So go into that a little bit more, right?
Yeah. But they got these concept drawings of these Interloon harvesters, and actually it looks like a pretty amazing little machine. Yep. The real issue, of course, a machine that size that can do 100 metric tons in an hour, it's got to be pretty good size. So it's going to take something Starship size to get it there. And then you're going to need something to haul the helium-3 back with. Now, the good news is that helium-3 comes out, I don't know, something at about $20 million a kilo.
Yep.
Or the price per liter is about $2,500 a liter, or as some people said, something on the order of several thousand a gram or something. It's just insane small price. So you don't need much. You don't need much of a return vehicle because a kilo isn't going to be in a very big package if you concentrate it well enough. Yep. And so it will have to. They're not showing anything about what their little return ship is going to look like. They have one concept drawing, although there's 3 missions. They're taking a lander called Crescent Moon is coming up at the end of this year. They're sending a hyperspectral camera as a ride share to the South Pole, and then it'll be followed by Prospect Moon. They'll take a lander to an area where they believe the concentration is high, and try to validate the concentration and prove the method of extraction. Then the 3rd mission, finally, they call Harvest Moon, would be an end-to-end demonstration for the process of extracting it and sending it back.
Yeah. And
so the timing for that mission, they say in the article, may have some connection to plans for delivering helium-3 to the Department of Energy. So the Department of Energy is their customer right now.
That is remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean,
you think?
So let's go back to the cult conversations we were having a minute ago.
No.
Probably 15 years ago, a company that doesn't exist anymore got a purchase power agreement with the state of California to produce space-based solar energy. And that was supposed to be this landmark moment, this waterfall moment where everything was going to happen after that. And that company evaporated a long time ago. And that purchase power agreement never came to fruition. But it's marked as this point in history where the impossible suddenly has a glimmer of hope. And this This is the same thing. Now, let's give these folks some credit. All right, let's move away from the cult conversation.
Sure.
Meyerson ran Blue Origin in its first days for the first like 15 years of its life. Maybe it was 14, something in that range. So Meyerson is no joke. He scaled Blue from 0 to 6,000 or 7,000 people. I'll tell you, I have a personal connection to Meyerson. We're not buddies. I'm not going to claim that, but we've had beer and pizza twice. There was talk about him joining my team.
Say no more, beer and pizza.
Right, beer and pizza. That's the
that's how we solve the problems.
That's the litmus test for the space community, right? Beer and pizza. So I have a lot of respect for him. I have encountered Gary Lai a couple times as a Blue employee. These folks are no joke, right? So if they think they're onto something, they can swing a conversation with the Department of Energy. I don't know anything about Maybell and I don't know anything about Vermeer until I read this article, but if there's anybody in the world that can pull off helium-3 on the moon, these two folks are probably the people I would bet on. So,
okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, it's good. This thing has market value in other ways other than feeding fusion engines because we still don't really have them yet.
No.
On that topic, there was about last week, there was an announcement that one of the experimenters who've been doing this fusion thing, they said they finally got to a point where they got more out than they put in.
Right.
And it was something like 2 megajoules were put in and 3 megajoules came out. Now, maybe Morty's with us. He's on a maybe he has access to a calculator. He can figure out how many watts there is in a million joules, and to see what the net gain there was there.
Right.
But so we're getting there. But if that's how we intend to do fusion with helium-3 in a big hot chamber like that, if that's the only method we're going to find that'll work, it may still be 2049 before we we have a couple of gigawatts of output that we can actually hook into the grid.
Yeah, I don't think they're counting on that sort of mythic and hoped for clients, right? It was Charles Radley that taught me about helium-3 a long time ago. And he's like, look, this is a useful tool in the industrial world right now. It's used in MRIs, it's used in chip making processes.
Right. It's used for all sorts of things. That's
so
what I mentioned.
We don't have to Godex stuff. Yeah.
That's what I mean. It may still be 2049 before we get, we have demand by fusion engines to use helium-3. That was my point. But
right.
Yeah, there's use for it in other industries at 2,500 a liter or 10 million a kilo. I mean, it's okay. It pushes
the downmass thing that we were talking about last week.
If you can do it, that's a business model.
Hey, so, I have the part of the QR code here. Can you give me the link that you want to go to? The website
it should be all built in. When you aim the camera at it.
Yeah.
No,
I can do it on
the camera at it.
I can do it on my phone.
Over there, the link should show up.
Okay. I can do it on my phone. All right, moving on.
I can't do it otherwise. It created itself when I did the whole thing and did in March. I sent out a newsletter and put the QR code in there, and this thing all self-generates. That network.
All right,
good.
Let's move on to the next news. What do you got? What do you want to go for?
Okay. Well, I guess the company Japanese company iSpace, they have a lander that they sent to the moon, and they just announced today that it successfully achieved lunar orbit.
Yeah.
So we're pelting the moon with landers right now. They're right and left and center. It's like every week or every other week, we got another lunar lander going there. This is great. This is absolutely great. Now the of course I have to balance that with the other side of the coin, which is another, the brutal irony of the day, which is NASA is still looking for a ride for their Viper rover. They thought they
Right.
had something lined up, and it crapped out on them. And now they spent how much have they spent on designing that thing and building it, and now they can't find something to fly it on.
This is like the little rover that could, right?
Yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
trying, and I wish them all the luck. It was super frustrating that they canceled that mission.
Yeah.
But let's bounce between iSpace and Viper for a second, right? So you've got this situation where we are going back to the moon as a global experience. There are many nations doing that, and I think it's inevitable that we get good at this. Although right now it's super clumsy. But this is the second mission, third mission. This is the third mission this year,
So far,
I think, and we have 2 missions last year and 3 craters the year before, or something like that.
So yeah,
So we're near, but not quite 10 missions in the last 3 years. I think that we could count that pretty easily. This is a thing. This is the new reality that the world is going to have to get used to. How many friends do you know that we're going to the moon? How many people do you know? Because most of the people in my circles do not know we're going to the moon. Why is that?
Well, we suck at advertising. Apparently, we just completely suck at it. I cannot explain to you why that's a problem. But obviously, something sucks badly somewhere between the service providers and NASA itself and the media.
We're so bad at telling the story. So here we have
Now,
this little rover.
But here's the other thing. Here's the story that the media will be all over like a cheap suit, right? Well, I'm not going to go into detail on it. I don't care. I don't have an axe to grind. But apparently, House Democrats are desperately seeking information from NASA and the Pentagon on Elon Musk's conflicts of interest and SpaceX foreign investment. You'll see that all over everything emblazoned for the next month if they find the slightest fraction of anything.
Right.
And that's all they'll talk about. Not like, we successfully landed 3 landers on the moon, and we're launching our spaceship maybe as early as the end of this year because we're trying to get something up there and get ahead of the Chinese and send people around the moon. And no one cares. No one looks at it.
Nope. I do think that looking at some conflicts of interest is a legitimate role for Congress, right? Whether the blue side or the red side,
and all of them, except for about maybe 5 people I know, in Congress, need to look in the mirror first.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the problem of all this. We're going to look for conflicts of interest. Yes, Congresswoman Pelosi. Yes, please.
No one is surprised at this headline, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So people are surprised that we've got rovers that are already built that need a home and a path to get to the moon. And no one is surprised that that Elon is going to have conflicts of interest, but everyone is surprised that we actually have missions going to the moon, right? That's the thing that kills me. All right, let's move on to this.
Hold on. Someone, I've got Luke up here who says, well, so are you pro Elon? Well, I'm not anti-Elon. I'm not pro Elon. The person I'm really pro is Gwen Shotwell.
Gwen Shotwell. Yeah. We all have a love affair with
come on.
Yeah.
That's for this show. Okay. Yeah. That's what this show's about. So, we don't try we try to keep the politics neutral when we can. Sometimes Michael and I can't help ourselves, but we really try to keep it sweet in the middle.
Right. And everybody knows that Tom is reddish and I am bluish, but we're both purple. Right. That's not a secret.
I'm not to the right of Mussolini. I'm more to the right of Margaret Thatcher. something like that.
Right,
So it's
right.
not that bad,
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, we
I
don't
just
we don't
say,
usually get into the politics, but nobody
yeah,
is surprised by this headline, right?
no,
Yeah, yeah,
not at all. But my
uh,
point was that's emblazoned all over everything.
right,
Meanwhile, all the good stuff that's happening on the moon, crickets from those guys.
right.
You know, it's just sensationalism to sell an ad.
Cool. Well,
So
thanks, Luke. If this is your first time on the show, we'd love having you.
absolutely,
It's we've been doing this for we'll just fill you in
6
for a
months,
second.
almost 6 months.
We've
October
been
we
doing
started.
this so we've been doing this show for about 6 months.
6 months. I'm
About
telling you,
2
October.
months 2 months ago, we started upping our game. We went from once every 2 weeks to twice a week. So we usually have the
I never
first
see
15, 20 minutes of the show is news. It's a news review. And then the last 30 minutes to 40 minutes is a guest. And that's our method and mottos.
Yep.
And we love having you. So if this is your
Thanks
first
for
time,
joining us, Luke.
yeah,
Welcome.
appreciate it.
No, the other thing, and again, it's just very quickly, and we can move on. Is
Yeah.
that Breaking Defense link? That was
Yeah.
the guy that says there's a potential product line for orbital warfare satellites. They're already there. It's like Cal Worthington and his dog Spot. He's already up there, selling stuff
Right?
in high orbit. Yes, you too can break up more spy satellites from China than any other brand. And we can deliver it next week. And for the first $1 billion, you get a free thing that makes cocktails for you, like that scene in Iron Man.
So let's talk about the Rapid Capabilities Office for a second. About just what does this mean? First of all, I've said many times on this show that this space industrial base meeting that happens in New Mexico is probably the most important meeting in the country, and I say that after the Space Symposium happened just 3 weeks prior. I think this is by far a more important meeting because this is where the sausage gets made. This meeting here,
Yeah.
so that Hammett is going as the Rapid Capabilities Director. This office has a fascinating history all by itself. It came into being as part of a March Storm effort probably 15 years ago, might be 20 years ago. It was a single person office that people are like, no, we need to be able to react better and faster. And this RCO came online as a result of a community-led development in the space community. So hats off to those folks. But as this thing is starting to happen, we're like, what do we do, right? How do we beat the Chinese machine? What do we do differently than what they do? Well, we have industrial might, and factories of spaceships is a real thing. I live just outside of Seattle. Redmond is the satellite capital of the world. Both Starlink and Kuiper are both built in the same town, only about 3 miles apart, 6 miles apart. We can do a lot of stuff if we push this. So I thought this was really interesting because this says we have industrial capability. When we want to build something, we will. And I just thought it was really like a product line of Space Force assets. That's a new way of thinking, and that's only come online in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. And that kind of thinking comes out of the state of the space industrial base meeting. So
right, and the private entrepreneurial sector is going to be playing a huge role in all of this.
Absolutely,
that freedom of creativity that comes on with free minds and free markets is going to win in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys get a head start. Like the Soviets got a head start because they had their, they had their command and control economy. He says, you are going to build a rocket to moon now. Well, okay. But then there's not a lot of creativity. By the time you get to a certain point, it kind of slows down.
Yeah.
But we put everything into gear, everything that our market economy is capable of. And look what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only in 2017. I was there in Adelaide when Elon first introduced the concept of what he then called the BFR,
Big
now known as Starship.
rocket.
Big fucking
Yep.
rocket. It's now
Yep.
known as Starship. But
Yep.
basically, the animation that he showed then wasn't that far off
Mhm.
from what he actually built.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So we've
Let's-
talked about rockets. We've talked a lot about shipping containers and the way we're going to move cargo between one place to place there. Well, that also has to lead to a discussion.
You're killing the intro. Hold off on the intro. I really want to talk about this one. This one is a piece. No,
you're right.
No, seriously, this is a piece of news that we should all be paying attention to. So
we finally made the list.
I know we made the list. We've never made the list
finally.
before.
By 2040, but we made the list.
So seriously, check out the headline, right? 18 industries that could reshape the global. Space has never made the list. And here we are, we're near the bottom. All right. But we're higher than cybersecurity, batteries, and modular construction. So, and we're higher than video games, which I never thought we were going to be higher than that. I kind of think that obesity drugs on this list is kind of funny. But seriously, we're higher than biotech. Who saw that coming, right? So 1.6 by 2040. I was pretty surprised we made this list. So I think that's that's a beer and champagne moment.
Because the main stuff that they show on there, none of it's less than $1 trillion. So yeah. Of course they say
nothing less than $1 trillion.
This is what kills me. E-commerce has the top spot at 20 trillion.
Right.
That's just insane.
We're at the noise level, the budget noise level, the budget dust level of e-commerce, right?
But the noise level is now
But I mean, this is McKinsey. This is no joke. And by the way, McKinsey is sponsoring a defense symposium that four-star General Salzman is going to be at next week. So, like, McKinsey's paying attention to this because that's where their clients come from. So, yeah, pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. All right, sorry, man. I didn't mean to kill your flow there.
You had every right to do it. I had it on the list, and I blew right past it. Like a dumbass. Yep. So, not a problem.
Please restart your grand introduction.
I'll do the PowerPoint version. We've been talking a lot about shipping containers. We've been talking a lot about standardization. We've talking a lot about moving massive amounts of material point to point in the solar system to facilitate global trade or solar system trade. So what kind of trade is that going to look like? That goes the next logical thing to discuss is actually settlements themselves. Yep. We all talk about wanting to build settlements on the moon, on Mars, in the asteroid belt. And maybe we should start by I thought we'd just throw a few ideas at the wall and see what that kind of economy will look like. How does a space settlement with, say, maybe thousands of people living in each place? What are they going to do to make a living? What are they going to do to support themselves and sustain themselves? Because they can't sustain themselves on shipments from Earth forever. They got to make their own stuff and then find stuff to sell to somebody and go from there. And with us is Dr. Doug Plata. He's a big space fan, and he's been one of our drivers on the shipping container thing. Yep. And he's been looking at all these problems, and I just want to, and he could be here on short notice. This is welcome, Doug. Welcome back. Nice having you. Yep. Okay. So we'll start with you. What you're thinking? How does a Mars settlement pay for itself?
Yeah, exactly. That's a big question. I think is fundamental to us space advocates. We don't want to do just footprints and flags, right? We want permanence, sustainability, and I think that many people, totally understandable. Many space advocates say, okay, the government may have a role, but a government isn't going to establish settlement because if you want sustainability, you need economic sustainability, and that really is markets. You gotta turn a profit, otherwise it's just going to wither. And we can take a look at, for example, the ISS. The ISS has been sustained. So is it sustainable in your opinion?
I mean,
not just no, but hell no.
I love the ISS, but it is a gigantic money pit. I've complained about CASIS, was it the Center for the Advancements of Science and Space or something like that? I've complained about CASIS. They are the national lab component of the American piece of the ISS. And I think they just burn through money.
So maybe the government-led approach will be expensive, but if it's sustainable, then we can have government-led settlement off Earth that will be expensive, maybe not efficient, but at least that's the way humanity will be able to establish himself and spread, right? Well, I don't think there's hardly anybody who believes that, right?
Right.
And the case in point is the ISS. It's general agreement. It's going to be ditched in the Pacific in the next, 5 years from now, right?
Yeah. And there's talk about doing sooner, but that'll piss off all the international partners.
Well, the thing is, too, you got to understand. I was at the Space Symposium a month ago talking to a whole bunch of people, and a few of whom are trying to get into the private commercial orbiting habitat business. And they are waiting and cheering for the day when ISS finally goes away, because their market demand will finally open up for them. Because we want a long-term sustainable thing in Earth orbit and on other places, and these guys are poised to actually build them and learn the lessons from ISS and build better stuff that'll actually work more efficiently and not cost so much to maintain, and will maybe last longer. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, what I'm getting at here is I think there's sort of this general belief that if we want really long-term sustainability, like sustainability of settlements, then what we need to do is we need to have people, businesses turning a profit. Like say, for example, you look at the big box stores. Do you guys remember Kmart?
Yeah.
They were big at one point, but they couldn't sustain themselves because they couldn't maintain profitability against the competition. But for the consumer, it didn't matter. We still have big box grocery stores and goods being sold. It's just that it's somebody else who found a better way to do it, and the market continues, and it's absolutely sustainable. So I think fundamentally at the foundation of commercial space advocates' perspective is you need profitability. If you can get on that track to profitability, it not only sustain itself like almost forever, but it will grow and expand, and that's sort of the future that we as space advocates want to see. We want to see humanity establish permanent foothold and then expand into settlements.
It's really the expansion that's going to actually put money in the pockets and get more people out there, because we've talked about people getting up there just right now. I mean, look, we just celebrated Alan Shepard's day. So 64 years and 3 days ago, the first American went into space. Only about 640 people have gone to space since then. That's an average of 10 a year. And so it's not a huge growth factor for humanity. I want to see the day when there are 65,000 people living out there, and they're living on the moon and Mars and in Earth orbit and in the asteroid belt and wherever they want to go in large clusters doing interesting work. And believe me, when you're out there, it will be a strict meritocracy. Everyone will be looking at themselves and each other and going, how can I earn my oxygen today? And and so they're going to be looking for new ways to improve their economics and create new things. And maybe some new biotech products will come out. That's what Stan Robinson talked about in his Mars novel so many years ago. They ended up creating new biotech products that added great value, to Earth. They figured out a way, almost by accident, when they were looking at other stuff to do terraforming with. Oh, this will vastly extend human lifespan by hundreds of years. That became a big export for them. Just as an example, I mean, this could be anywhere.
Okay, I'm going to, in this show, I'm going to push back, and I mean, I think this is what will make the show interesting. I'm going to push back at the commercial space ideology, the perspective, because basically the idea is, it's like thinking like a venture capitalist. We need to figure out what is going to make the money. What's the killer app? And so venture capitalists, they want return on investment. They want it short term. They want super, what's it called? Super something profits, like supernatural profits.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they want a 20x ROI in less than 10 years, and the phrase is return of the funds. So every investment that they make, they know that most of them are going to fail, and they want each bet that they make to be enough to carry the whole fund. So if it's a $20 million fund, and they make $20 million bets, each one is supposed to return $20 million.
Okay.
And that is crazy.
Okay. So my question is, how much of the economy on Earth is based upon people getting a return on their investment? Okay. And let me push it. Is the government, are they pretty good at getting return on investment? No. And yet they're a certain percentage of the economy. Okay. It's inefficient. It's not, probably the less government we have, the more, growth we're going to have in the economy. Okay. But when I go to the grocery store, am I thinking like an investor? Am I saying, I'm not going to go and get anything unless I can turn a profit? No, I'm planning to spend money, right? With no goal of profit personally. When I go to a movie, do I only go because I'm wanting to turn a profit on this, taking a date only to turn a profit? Okay. Mm-hmm. How about tourism? Do we go to, as consumers, do we go on a tour only to return a profit? And not only a profit, but a supernatural,
That's not, that's not the point. I mean, the people, there are people who consume and people who produce, and for that, and the people who are trying to produce the things you need for your life or for your leisure time or whatever it is you're doing, they expect to make a profit so they can keep doing it.
Yeah,
exactly. So when we think about motivation, we need to make a distinction between the consumers who have the money, they have worked, they've saved, and now they're spending their money with really no expectation of return of profit. But then you have the businesses that are serving that nonprofit demand, okay? Right. And they're making the profit, but we consumers are not. So my question is space settlement going to be only a business to business, investment, return on investment sort of thing? Or is it going to be consumer with businesses in that sort of transaction? And I'm suggesting it's the latter.
It could be a mix of both. Let me throw some a monkey wrench into that. Peter Diamandis, the author of a book called Abundance, would like you to know that over the long haul, the long course of time, we will be transitioning from an economic system based on relative scarcity to one based on relative abundance, which also is my prediction that over 90% of everything that's ultimately obtained in space, mined in space, grown in space, is going to stay there.
Bingo.
Very little of it is going to be for people who, for the use of the people that are going out there by leaps and bounds as fast as they can.
Right. Even if Interlune is successful with their helium-3 extraction, that's going to be an outlier of sending stuff back home to Earth.
Exactly. Exactly. That's my point. So, but think about how many panels we've been at Space Advocate conferences in which they're talking about what's the business case for space development, and very quickly it turns to mining, right? And the popular one isn't actually helium-3, it's water for
Right.
propellant.
Yeah.
That's the low-hanging fruit. That's probably the first one.
Yeah.
But now you guys have talked about it. Other people's talked about helium-3. Okay, maybe that is it, or platinum group metals. Okay,
Platinum group. I'm
Yeah.
a believer of the platinum
Right.
group rare earth elements. Yeah.
But does it really mean that we're not going to have sustainability in space until we figure out what mineable material is useful for either export back to Earth or for use in space like propellant? Is that really the heart of the economy, or is it going to be consumers who have savings, governments who have budgets, being served by companies, and the resources, including propellant, is really only used in space, which means that the market size is based upon the customers in space, which is not going to be really big initially, and over time, yes, it will grow, but it'll be far smaller for a very long time compared to the economy on Earth. Do you see where I'm getting at?
Well, sure. So they're mining carbonaceous chondrites to get certain types of volatile materials that they can use for construction and to make plastics and do stuff like that. But along the way, they may open up one of these asteroids and find a group of platinum group metals and rare earths in smaller quantities that they package up and send to Earth for, quote, hard currency. It may,
Right.
to afford other transactions, in a more complex web. It may end up something like that. Who knows?
Yes, but if you were to take that argument to a venture capitalist today, could you get them to invest in that? You say, look, I don't know for sure, what we're going to find when we break open a nickel iron meteorite, but trust me, the first trillionaire is going to be made in space. And if you're a smart venture capitalist, you're going to say, I think I can make more money on AI back on Earth or whatnot.
Right.
Okay. So
Well, you just need to find that guy who wants to sell the picks and shovels.
Yeah, no. No. Doug's definitely right here. I mean, I'm talking to VCs on a regular basis, and those folks, as imaginative as they are, and as a class, I've been pretty impressed with the VCs that I know. They do imagine an abundant future. They do imagine changing the world. Like, they got into it for a reason, but very few of them are making the hard choices. This is a build it, if you build it, they will come industry, and very few of them are willing to write checks if they can make a quick buck on AI, if they can make a quick buck on games. Like, we just looked at this list of all the industries that are multi-trillion-dollar industries. Space is at the bottom. It's easier to make money in the other places.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Back when we were first starting all this, Michael, in space advocacy, even before that, I was late 90s. I was working on that stuff. The giggle factor was alive and well then, hugely, for everything that we're doing now.
Yeah.
And making it look easy. But it took 25 years to get there.
Jason
so when you talk about everybody's kind of iffy about this, it's just that the giggle factor, we've taken the giggle factor to a new level because we expanded our horizon and expanded our dream, and now the giggle factor is back. Of course it is.
That's interesting.
We'll chip away at that too.
All right,
we'll just push it along with history.
All right, I know Doug wants to say something. Let me jump in and just kind of pass it. So Jason on the chat is asking about tugs and cyclers, which are purchase orderable technologies now. There are tugs, there are transfer vehicles. That is something that if you call Momentous or some of the others and say, okay, Q3 of 2026, I want to move from A to B, A location, Leo to Geo, right? You can do that. But when Tom and I were starting, and less so with Doug, but not far behind, that was straight up science fiction. And now there's 6 companies doing it. So in a very real way, like the giggle factor when we all started was something we all had to overcome. You couldn't have a real conversation about a Martian settlement or a lunar settlement. You couldn't have it without somebody making smart ass jokes. Now the industry has moved because there is an industry and we are $1 trillion industry. And you can have these real conversations. So there are crazy things like, I'm somewhat famous for saying if you're not having babies, you're just camping, right? Doug, you asked about sustainability. If you're not having babies, you're just camping. So that's what to me is space sustainable, right? You can't have a kid on the ISS. You probably can't have a kid on an Axiom or a Gravitics or a other station. So that's and Doug, if you're like, it's going to be a consumer-led industry. Well, you need to have kiddos up there. So
you guys,
I think we're a long ways from the consumer-led Martian settlement or lunar settlement.
We have 11 minutes left. I do have. I would like to be able to explain how I think it's going to happen financially.
Great, I'd love that.
So, okay, so I think the marketplace is driven by motivations. Why are people willing to hand over money? Okay, and I think that a key factor that is changing space. The commercial space is the reduction in cost, because if you can reduce by transportation, which we are most definitely seeing, especially thanks to, I think it is entirely plausible if you take a look at the engine production rate, the Starship factory to produce the bodies, and you see especially their engine production rate, how many engines they're producing each week. The idea that Elon has said and Gwynne Shotwell has said about 1,000 Starships by 2030, that actually seems pretty plausible if you just take a look at their production rate. Okay.
Yep.
And we see that they are really serious and making some pretty good progress towards full reusability. They've caught the first stage. The Pinpoint landed twice, the second stage. So the idea of fully reusable super heavy lift vehicle, it seems entirely plausible. And the propellant depot, storage, and transfer, from what I know about it, speaking to the lead researcher on propellant depots, Bernard Cutter, passed away, but he's at ULA, leading publisher. That's not going to be a terrible challenge. That's probably, he thought it's going to work on the first effort, the first attempt, okay, but certainly the second or third. So there is the transportation, lower cost, but then there's also producing stuff locally for local use. So that's plastics on Mars and water and metals and these sorts of things. So you don't have to transport it. So you can significantly reduce the cost there, because markets are very driven. Obviously markets are price sensitive. So if you can go ahead and reduce the cost, then you can attract much more business. You can actually grow the economy more than simply if you cut the cost in half. It doesn't mean you double it. It could be triple or quadruple or more. Okay, and we are fortunately on that path to be able to see how much the reduction of cost is going to drive things. Michael, I want to push back a little bit of the idea that we have $1 trillion space economy now. It depends on if you count everything. GPS is part of the space economy, which is what all of banking. Okay. But what I would say is there are certain space technologies which are profitable. I'm going to say geo satellites that have not moved us towards settlement.
Right.
And it could be, the only reason why Starlink is going to move us towards settlement is because Elon is deciding he's not going to build himself a big mansion and a lot of yachts. He's going to use that money for settlement. And it's really only for that reason that we can think about that $20 to $30 billion going towards settlement. Okay. So here is what I think is how it's going to play itself financially out in terms of settlement. I think it starts with the first seats and the first kilograms that Starship and New Glenn and their Blue Moon lander is landing. That's going to be the most expensive seats because they're still building up their flight rates. They don't have their fleet fully out, and besides, they have to pay down their investment. So it's going to be the most expensive seats. Who has the deepest seats? Deepest pockets, it's governments. The NASA, anyhow. So I think we're going to have a phase of sovereign clients, and it's not just going to be the United States, and it's not going to be the United States plus ISS partners. When you can get down on Starship, you really look many countries willing to pay the ticket to have their national astronaut heroes go on a mission of lunar exploration or be part of the Mars missions, and they're willing to pay a premium for those seats higher than what wealthy individuals are able to pay. So I think there is this sovereign client phase. Now, yes, they are going to want to watch, and trust me, there's countries are strongly motivated by national prestige if you're a leading country, or national pride if you're a smaller country. Yep. Okay. Yep. Strong, and we see the countries that want to be on Mir, on an International Space Station. There's a strong motivation there, and that has been the main driver for human spaceflight for decades now. Okay.
China's beginning to share out their Heavenly Palace access, right?
Yes.
That soft power potential is gigantic.
Absolutely. And we're willing to pay tens of billions of dollars each year because of national prestige. Okay. So I think in a very large international lunar exploration phase, similar sort of thing on Mars, but the moment you have large amounts of cargo able to be delivered to the surface of the moon or Mars, you also have, I think it's going to easily transition to international bases on the moon and Mars. If you're sending their people there, and if you want to leave some of your astronauts there to represent your country in this growing of humanity off Earth, I think a strong motivation there. Okay. Now, here's a key point: what is the difference from a technological standpoint between a government base and a settlement? Both need power systems, both need habitats, both need life support, both need food, water, surface transportation, etc. So to a very large degree, we don't have to pass policies to make settlement part of NASA's charter. All we need to do is to have them build a government base for government reasons, like McMurdo. And then as they pay their companies and competing companies between countries to compete on quality and price, those technologies are going to get to the point where when wealthy private individuals say, hey, I want to be part of the Mayflower generation, I want to be the first on the moon or Mars, or whatever that subjective motivation is, they pay these companies who have now, their R&D has been paid for by governments. Now they simply crank one more production of one more unit of habitat, one more unit of food, etc., life support, and it's going to be far less expensive than the initial government cost. And then with high flight rate, with low cost to get there, lower cost to sustain yourself, we have the potential of transitioning from government to adding on to the government basis of private individuals. And like the more Japanese speakers get there, eventually they might say, hey, let's make a little, pay these companies to make a little Tokyo. Okay, so that's sort of my vision about how settlement gets started. And the question is for the private individuals, are they going in order to turn a profit? Are they only going to go to turn a profit? I would say there are subjective motivations that might be personal significance. Sure. I think it's going to be maybe religion, like, UAE wants to make sure that Muslims are represented there, and therefore their sovereign client fund is going to be used to purchase some of those seats, and some of those princes and whatnot will make their way and represent them. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
And another vision I had with this too, and actually feeds into the whole thing that you guys are talking about, building all sorts of new communities, and they're culturally different and whatever they are, is that
Right.
we're going to send I have this vision. I'm going to write a story about it sometime, I think, of we send a bunch of Texas roughnecks to Mars to drill for water. And when they find some, I think they're going to find something about the size of the Great Lakes, and they're just going to be able to pump that out and feed everybody fresh, pure water for generations.
Absolutely.
Fun.
Easy.
And they'll have multiple motivations in doing that.
I think that's a great vision for the future. I want to point out that Doug, you're like Dr. Plata, you're like, oh well, it's going to be like McMurdo. McMurdo doesn't have children. You don't have kids running around. And as long as we have a national policy of no sex on the ISS, there aren't going to be any children up there either. Right. And so
There's been sex on the ISS.
probably,
pretending
but
it just
not
didn't
officially. Probably, but not officially.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
my
But-
point is that, you know, Jug, you asked the question of like, what's the difference? A settlement is a permanent decision. A government facility is not a settlement. It's not the way we have
And
it
it's
set right
also,
now.
and the facility in McMurdo is also controlled by this Antarctic treaty that a
Right.
bunch of nations signed in 1957.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're not, in fact, people have in the advocacy, in the legal advocacy, have fought tooth and nail to prevent that kind of model from ever being imposed on the moon or Mars or someplace else. So
when private individuals start going, including spouses,
Mm-hmm.
the government rules in terms of sex do not apply to them.
I hope so.
Okay. Now, it is a whole nother discussion about whether we can have children safely off Earth.
Sure.
That's a whole, and I
Yep.
do it.
Yep.
And I'm not real confident that, you know, the harm caused by growing up in reduced gravity is acceptable. That might be a real problem. But what I would,
Mhm.
Michael, what I would put back at you is a retirement community a community? Is it a legitimate community?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we have problems safely having children on the moon and Mars, but there's people who they've saved up enough money, they're retirees, they don't have child rearing responsibilities, they don't have job responsibilities, but they want to move, and they create a community, including local governance and et cetera.
Mhm.
Are they a
Yeah.
community? Are they a little retirement settlement? The answer is yes. So I'm not arguing against having children off Earth. I'm saying that's not fundamentally the definition of settlement.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. We just talked Morty out of going to space.
It's like, I'm not going there.
Oh man, oh God. I had such hopes for you, Morty. Oh my
Yeah.
God. My God.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jason, I'm definitely all about processing materials at the Lagrange point. So thanks for that comment too.
Absolutely. And that we have to kind of call an end to this, but it has been a great discussion. I hope we have a lot more of them. We'll build up a repertoire of this material, and somehow we'll get that published by a third party. And all of a sudden there'll be this huge tome out there going, oh, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's from simple conversations like this, all of a sudden all sorts of stuff starts sticking to the wall. And there we go. Doug Plata, MD, thank you so much for joining us in this. You always have some really great insights. Love to have you. And Michael, we'll see you on time.
On time next
On
week.
Monday.
Yeah, on Monday. We've got some great guests. Lee
Well,
Steinke is coming in, and Jonathan Stroud, I think, is
Monday, actually. Monday. That's what I was going to go to. Because it's time to sign off.
Well,
Monday, we will have May 8th, serial entrepreneur and serial investor Rich Godwin is going to be joining us. Great, dear friend, British guy, wickedly funny. And we're going to talk about his companies and his investments and where he sees the new space sector going in the next few years. This is one of the guys, he's one of the guys who has both written the checks and receive the checks. So he's right at the intersection, and this is going to be a really amazing interview. Coming Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, of course. Same bat time, same bat channel. And on that note, from the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, this is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.